What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Only Football Podcast. My name is Kyle. Unfortunately, we got to start this off with some bad news. And normally, I know that we like to put, sad news towards the end of the episodes, but out of respect for the New England Patriots, I figured we could talk about it right now. And I don't know if you guys know who Brian Hoyer is. Brian Hoyer played for the Cleveland Browns for a while. But in Houston, Brian Hoyer was in a quarterback competition with Ryan Mallett. And unfortunately, Ryan Mallett has died in an apparent drowning at a Florida beach. This was in the Gulf. So I would imagine around Pensacola, although I haven't seen exactly where at. Look, it's always tough when somebody dies. It's especially tough when somebody dies. It's in their 30s. I watched Ryan Mallett play. I was familiar with who that was. Maybe some of the younger generation, not so much familiar with Ryan Mallett. He played at Michigan, and then he played at Arkansas, and he had 2 back-to-back 30-plus touchdown seasons in Arkansas, and he broke nearly every record at Arkansas. He was drafted in the 3rd round to the New England Patriots, and at the time, many people believed that he was going to be the successor of Tom Brady. The first time we saw him in action, he was actually coming in during a preseason game against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and he looked great. I know Jacksonville, we don't need to say it. Jacksonville preseason, it was still impressive. Okay. He was there for 2 or 3 years, and then he was sent to the Houston Texans. The Houston Texans, I don't believe in speaking ill of the dead, but Ryan Mallett had some personal issues. He was in a quarterback competition. He didn't handle it very well when Brian Hoyer got the nod. He actually overslept. 3 days later, he overslept, missed his alarm clock. It was kind of a big spoof. And then eventually he did go in and get some playing time, but then they switched back to Brian Hoyer after about 5 weeks. And then the next away game, he missed the flight. It was kind of a power struggle internally within the organization. There were sports media attacking from all sides. Colin Cowherd, I remember him saying that he's not grown up enough to be in the NFL. So as far as the NFL, I would rather not focus on that side of Ryan Mallett because there's a much funner, brighter side. Everybody has been coming out saying how great of a person Ryan Mallett was, including J.J. Watt, who very memorably caught the first touchdown pass from Ryan Mallett ever in a regular season meaningful game. So, yeah, I'm going to say the same thing Bill Belichick said was it's tragic. It's sad in my hearts with everybody that is affected by, this news. Anybody that was close to Ryan Mallett. Only Football, on behalf of myself and Rick, we send our condolences to the Mallett family and the close friends and family. So I don't want to say we got that out of the way, like it's, something that we wanted to get out of the way, but we are going to move on to our next topic, okay? And we'll kind of stay with the New England Patriots because Devonte Parker has signed a new deal. And Devonte Parker, I was looking at a YouTube episode that actually said one-hit wonders in the NFL. And I clicked on it. And to my surprise, Devonte Parker was there. And I realized that he had really only one good season with Miami, although sometimes the expectations are so high year after year that you just assume somebody's been really good for multiple years. But Devonte Parker, even since his trade with the New England, hasn't been, one of the top 25 receivers in the NFL. But, excuse me, we also know New England doesn't spend big money on their receivers. Case in point, Odell Beckham's a Raven and DeAndre Hopkins isn't signed. This is a very New England thing to do, is to give Devonte Parker a 3-year deal for $33 million, and maybe he is, maybe this is good value for the Patriots. I'm not sure. I know he has had his struggles staying healthy and whatnot, but there are incentives. So if he is able to go out there and ball out, he will make even more money. So they acquired him from the Miami Dolphins in 2022. So that was last year. He had 31 receptions, 539 yards, and 3 touchdowns in 13 games. So, look, New England, they weren't very good last season offensively. We don't have to reiterate the offensive coordinator thing and all of that noise, but they were not very good last season. They were 26th in total yards, and it's hard to really judge a wide receiver that's stuck in a poor offense. But he only had 31 receptions, 539 yards. That's not very good. And he only played 13 games. So with quarterback Mac Jones coming back healthy and Bill O'Brien now as the new offensive coordinator, Parker is probably going to be playing a pivotal role in the new offense and likely put up better numbers. So Parker is going to be a part of a better receiving corps this year than they had last year. They signed Juju Smith. They got Mike Gesicki from Miami. And Gesicki and Parker have already worked together in Miami, so the chemistry should be there. And yeah, so congratulations, Devonte Parker. And this was kind of a secret deal, right? Like this wasn't one that we expected. This one kind of snuck up on us here. So there is another deal that we haven't talked about that is a big deal, no pun intended. And I don't know if we have talked about it, but Josh Jacobs is holding out for a new contract. And we know Josh Jacobs was the best running back in the NFL last season. So you're talking about a guy that's just now going into his stride. Running backs aren't being paid in the NFL, like at all right now. And you see what happened with Austin Eckler. And I think for Josh Jacobs, what it is it's a timing thing. I think he's aware that they're going to try to use as much of him as they can on a rookie contract and then get rid of him. So he's basically saying, no, you're going to have to pay me while I'm young, while I still have a lot of tread on the tires. I'm not going to use all of this tread on rookie money. So I think that makes a lot of sense to me, but what does the Raiders look like right now without Josh Jacobs, right? They have Devontae Adams. They drafted a new tight end, but we don't even know who their quarterback is. Jimmy Garoppolo didn't pass the physical. And we've heard about San Francisco's quarterback problems, but we haven't really talked about the Raiders enough. And I think part of us just assumes that it's going to work out. I think they may have to go with their quarterback that they drafted. And I'm going to pull up his name right now because I just totally forgot. Aiden O'Connell. Okay. So Aiden O'Connell was drafted on April 29th. And I've heard a lot of good things from this guy, from the people that were scouting. Let's see, where did he went to Purdue. Okay. So, Aiden O'Connell might be the starting quarterback week 1. And I personally just think that's kind of interesting. I mean, I think most of us are just assuming whatever's going on with Jimmy Garoppolo will be worked out by week 1, but I don't really know the ins and outs of what it is, right? I feel like they've really kept this kind of on the down low, and it'll be really interesting if they just signed a quarterback that can't even play. You know what I mean? So as much as I would like to say like that sucks, I can't stand the Raiders, so I kind of like it. And I kind of got a bone to pick with the NFL right now. And I'm going to use my words carefully. When you're a fan of a team, I think a lot of times nobody knows the team as good as a diehard fan. That goes for the NFL media, right? Because the NFL media is all wide brushstrokes, right? They just cover everything on, any big news is going to be covered, but the small intricate details they don't talk about, right? That's where your diehard fan comes in. There's been years where I've known a player is going to be good and people don't believe me, right? And I believe diehard fans, like more than the media. Like there was a guy that I was hanging out with. He's a Lions fan. I did an interview with him. He was telling me things about his players and the conviction in his voice. Like I believed him, right? And I know like fans can be wrong sometimes, but I feel like the NFL doesn't understand the impact Sean Payton has. Russell Wilson had a terrible year last year, but the NFL just released an article, which NFL team is most likely to end a long playoff drought in 2023. So some of the longest playoff droughts, you have the Jets, you have the Broncos, you have the Lions, you have the Falcons, and the Panthers. So they ranked them 1 through 5. What if I told you that the Atlanta Falcons are more likely, according to this article, to end their playoff drought than the Denver Broncos? And look, I have Atlanta as a dark horse. I really do. I think that they can be good. But come on. Like, don't disrespect Sean Payton like that. You're telling me that Sean Payton can't get his offense to put up 22 points a game, right? They only needed 17 last year, but let's say the defense takes a step back, right? Because Rick pointed this out. It is very hard to stay that good for 2 years in a row. So let's say they pull back a little bit, 20 points a game. I mean, the offense is going to put up at least 20 points a game, okay? The wide brushstrokes is like, this player gets signed, this player gets signed. Like, that's the NFL media. They don't know the ins and outs. They actually hire insiders for each team. Well, one of the recent ones that we just heard about with James Palmer, actually it was Mark Schlereth, who was an offensive lineman for the Broncos during the John Elway glory years. But anyway, he said that Sean Payton, his effect has already taken over the whole building. Now, this is very familiar language for Bronco fans, right? Because we had a similar guy come in and do that. Although that player was a player, that person was a player, not a coach. It was Peyton Manning. This all seems very familiar. Peyton Manning came in to a team that needed a lot of work, and he took us in his first year to a nail-biting playoff game. You know, they should have won. A Hail Mary from the Ravens won that game. And by the way, that was the team that won the Super Bowl. So Denver, in their first year, was winning late in the fourth quarter against who would be the Super Bowl champion Baltimore Ravens, Joe Flacco. But he said he went into the cafeteria where the players eat, and he said that there were like people that work in the building in the cafeteria, right? Like, I didn't know this So I don't want to pretend like, oh, I knew that this was a big deal. But apparently this is a big deal. Okay. Sean Payton had to go in there and be like, if you're not a player, get out. Like, you can get your brown paper bag and leave, or you can go, into town and get some food wherever you want, DoorDash. I don't care. But the cafeteria is not for you. The cafeteria is for players, and players to be having conversations with each other, not having to worry about you over their shoulder. It's a player bonding area. It's a sanctuary for the players. And that is just a small example of, and like, that not only is that a small example, that's just one example. Like, that's the only one they've told us, right? There's been so many little things like that Sean Payton has done. And it's unfortunate that we don't get to know them because he doesn't really interact with the media very well. But when you have somebody building an entire new culture, right? Even as great as the Aaron Rodgers story is, right? You got a team that's a quarterback away. You grab your offensive coordinator that you're best friends with, Nathaniel Hackett. You just plug and play, and now the Jets are Super Bowl contenders. As great as that story is, I mean, Aaron Rodgers has never been known for being like a strong leader, right? He's always been known for being an elite quarterback. And I think that's the difference between Peyton Manning and Tom Brady and some of these other guys and Aaron Rodgers is talent alone doesn't win games or doesn't win championships. It does win games. So, but what Sean Payton is doing in Denver is so much more than bringing in a really strong play caller. Really, it's more than that. And the Chiefs are a prime example of that. I mean, even before Patrick Mahomes, when they brought in Andy Reid, the Chiefs were a playoff team with Alex Smith. I mean, Denver was in the division with Peyton Manning, so they never really got out of that division. But point being, your great coaches that there's only a handful of, they do so much more than we see, especially us. So Denver being fourth on this list, I'm not upset because they've been bad for so long that I can understand why mainstream media is not crowning them or why they don't expect them to be great. But I feel very confident in saying that is way too low. Like, Denver and the New York Jets, I think Denver's more likely to make the playoffs in a really tough AFC than the Detroit Lions. Because the Lions have never played with expectations. They haven't. And we're about to see for the first time what the Lions are going to look like with the expectations. Okay. We already know who Sean Payton is. And we already know who Aaron Rodgers is. I think the Jets should be number one. We know Aaron Rodgers can take a good team to the playoffs. This isn't even about the Super Bowl. So, yeah, Jets number one. If you put Detroit at number two, then Denver's got to be number three, right? But no, number three is the Atlanta Falcons. And I love the Falcons and what they've done, but come on. I mean, it's a weak division, so you got that going for you. But at the end of the day, most people agree that the Saints are the most talented team in this division. And then the team at number five is the Carolina Panthers. Okay. I don't think that they're going to be able to turn it around that quick. I do think that the Panthers could double their win total, and that would be around 8-9 games. But let me propose this for a second. Let me propose, because you got two of these teams in the same division with the Falcons and the Panthers. So What if I propose that every one of these teams will make the playoffs? I mean, every year there's 4 or 5 new playoff teams normally. And on the AFC side of the house, it's really hard to predict who's not going to go because there's so many elite quarterbacks, and usually teams with elite quarterbacks automatically get in. But as far as the NFC, the Panthers are in the NFC. The Falcons are in the NFC. The Falcons are in the NFC. The Lions are in the NFC. And the only AFC new teams would be the Jets and the Broncos. Okay. The question is, who would they replace, right? I would say a team in the AFC. I mean, a team in the AFC East, right? The Bills, the Jets, and the Dolphins. Do all three go to the playoffs? I mean, we had it last season with the Giants, the Cowboys, and the Eagles. But the NFC was, it was pretty weak in comparison to the AFC. So I'm not sure if that can be done in the AFC is my point. So which team is going to be able to pull it off in the AFC East? I mean, I have no idea, to be honest. I mean, how can you rule out the Jets, right? And then the Bills, I mean, I feel like the Bills could pull back a little bit because it seems like they have a lot of internal issues. But then the Dolphins adding the Fangio and, getting a healthy Tua, I have no idea, man. So I could see why they would be remiss to put Denver in the playoffs. But this is what they wrote. There's a realistic chance Russell Wilson is cooked. If anyone can get him back on track, though, it's Peyton. The Super Bowl winning head coach is an amazing play caller who runs a tight ship. No more nonsense in Denver, which is refreshing after the 5-12 disaster in Nathaniel Hackett's lone season as head coach. Outside of the massive question mark at quarterback, this roster actually has promise too. Denver boasts a bunch of enticing skill players. If they can stay healthy and the offensive line looks pretty stout, defensively, the Broncos might have some legit dudes like Patrick Surtain and Justin Simmons. Peyton can at least squeeze 8 or 9 wins out of this roster. With a truly elite coach, Denver's back in business on the gridiron. I mean, what they write is all fine and dandy, but the NFL released a very similar article, and it kind of goes against what they're writing here because where is it? It's quarterbacks. Here we go. 2023 Superstar Club. And they say Jalen Hurts and CeeDee Lamb are going to join, and then Russell Wilson and Dak drop out. So, and it says, say goodbye to Russell Wilson. No further autopsy is necessary on Wilson's wrenched 2022 campaign, one that will deservedly go down as one of the biggest individual flops in recent NFL history. So, I mean, this is the root of the problem, is that if Russell Wilson if he's washed, of course, they're going to be ranked 4th out of 5 to end their playoff drought, right? So I think that this whole thing just comes down to, if you believe Russell Wilson is washed, the Broncos are not going to be able to overcome a challenging AFC. But if you believe that he's not, right, then you'll be like, Denver would definitely make the playoffs. If they get vintage Russell Wilson, the Russell Wilson that was in Seattle, then of course they're going to make the playoffs, right? And this is the stuff that Sean Payton is doing, getting Russell Wilson back to where he was, right? Even small things like wide receiver progression. So quarterback takes the snap, a simple play, for an example, a flat curl route, right? The progression is to look at the flat, see if he's there. If he's not there, then you look up to the curl route. The problem is if he's not there, by the time Russell Wilson looks for that curl route, the offensive linemen have backed up, right? Because pass rushers back up. And at that point, Russell Wilson now can't see over those guys because he's 5'11", right? So Russell Wilson or Sean Payton will switch it up and be like, no, throw the curl route first if it's there. Don't wait on it. And then look at the flat so that he doesn't have these big guys in front of him. Like these little details are going to get fixed. And I truly believe that Denver's mistakes were just attention to detail. There was not an adult in the room, right? So enough with the Denver Broncos, but I personally just felt like I had to bring that up. The other player that they wrote say goodbye to, Dak Prescott. When Prescott is on, as he was in the win against the Bucs in the wild card round of the playoffs last January, he can look as good as any quarterback in football. But Prescott is no longer the fresh face on the block in the franchise quarterback game. He'll begin his 8th season as the Cowboys QB1. Isn't that crazy? 8 years have almost gone by. We're 2 seasons away from Dak Prescott being in the NFL as a starter for a decade. It feels like he's on his 6th year. It's crazy. And he's never made an all-pro team or helped Dallas advance out of the divisional round. He led the league in interceptions last season, 15, despite missing 5 games to injury, and he hasn't shown the ability to lift an average supporting cast like Rodgers and Mahomes, like the Rodgers and Mahomes of the world. Dak Prescott is a very good quarterback. We're just done waiting for him to become truly great. I can get behind this one, okay? And I know you might be like, oh my gosh, like why are you able to get behind this one and you have a problem with the Russell Wilson one? Well, simply because we've seen Dak Prescott, as they've said here, for 8 years, which means at this point, I think we have a pretty good idea who Dak Prescott is. He's a pretty good quarterback. And this article just came out, but last week we said it right here on Only Football. Pretty good quarterbacks and pretty good teams don't win Super Bowls. They win wild card games. The Seahawks are a pretty good team. I believe the Giants are a pretty good team. The Chiefs, the Eagles, the Bengals, the Bills. These are elite teams. Why? Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Josh Allen. Okay? You get the picture. If Dak Prescott was elite, the Cowboys would have a Super Bowl ring by now. A Super Bowl appearance. An NFC championship, right? Something. And they don't. So this I can get behind. Now, here's the one thing with Russell Wilson that makes it different. We only have 1 year of Russell Wilson looking terrible, right? And in the world of the media, it's always been, what have you done for me lately? And victim of the moment. That is what sports is. I mean, if Russell Wilson goes out and throws 4 touchdown passes week 1, immediately everybody's going to be like, oh my God, they're going to take everything back that they said this offseason. If your job as a sports announcer, right, your job is to try to predict the future, okay? So nobody wants to be wrong. So what we have is kind of this agreement that last year's performance was what Russell Wilson truly is. What I can't understand for the life of me is how we would throw away a decade of somebody that looked totally different and say, that's not who he is. He was this, what he was 1 year ago. And by the way, you only have 1 year of it. It just blows my mind. Because I'll tell you this, Pete Carroll is not a better offensive coach than Sean Payton. He's not. So what are we really talking about here? I really feel like this is just like everyone pile on the guy because he's easy to bully, because he's cringy. I don't think Russell Wilson is going to be the best quarterback in the AFC West. He may not even be top 8 or 9, but he could get back up into the top 10 range, and that would equal playoffs. Justin Fields, another guy that could have a breakout year. What do you want to see from your young quarterbacks? From year 1 to year 2, you want to see them look a lot better. Justin Fields did. Justin Fields looked a lot better in year 2 than he looked in year 1. So, I mean, Justin Fields is a guy that could become a superstar. You know, he already is pretty much a superstar. He's the funnest player to watch on any Bears game, unless they're playing the Chiefs. I mean, who's going to be more fun to watch than the guy that can run for over 1,000 yards? Trevor Lawrence will be a superstar. Like, Trevor Lawrence will be on the cover of Madden. If he has to wait one more year because it's Jalen Hurts' turn, then so be it. But your next year's Madden cover will be Jalen Hurts or Trevor Lawrence. Write it down, because Trevor Lawrence is probably going to end up taking his team to a 13-4 season, and they're going to be the first seed in the AFC. So Trevor Lawrence will be a full-blown superstar by the end of this year. And then your other superstars aren't going anywhere. I thought of something yesterday. Something came up on my feed, and I don't know why, but it was Brett. It was a Brett Favre documentary, and I decided to click on it because the thumbnail picture was the Giants game that I went to in 2007, and I was just curious. So I clicked on it, and it was like a 30-minute documentary about him, and the Packers wouldn't trade him to a team in the NFC North, and Brett Favre was like, "So I'm not good enough to stay, but I'm too good to be. You don't want to play against me. That doesn't make sense." So they trade him to the Jets, and he basically just goes there so he can get traded to the Vikings, so he can return to Green Bay and beat the living crap out of them as a Viking. It was a very interesting documentary, because we just have never seen. I mean, that'd be like Tom Brady becoming look how the world reacted when the Bucks played the Patriots, right? It was like a huge deal. So imagine if Tom Brady would have gone to the Bills or something. And even so, I mean, the Packers, the only thing worse that could have happened was Brett Favre go to the Bears. And then, that would have been like unforgivable. Most people have said, time heals all wounds. And for most of the Packers nation, it has. But if he would have went to the Bears, absolutely not. There's no amount of time that would have healed that. But it occurred to me that Josh Allen might be Brett Favre. Wins a lot of games. You always have a chance to go to the Super Bowl. A gunslinger, sometimes to a fault, minus the running and the durability. But the toughness is there. Brett Favre was one of the toughest mofos in his time. The smack talking, the country, although it's a different type of country, it's Wyoming country instead of Louisiana country, but there's just so much. I was watching it and I'm like, this is Josh Allen, and Josh Allen, just like Brett Favre, is going to get a ring, but Patrick Mahomes is Tom Brady, right? And there was a moment two divisional round playoff games ago that we thought Josh Allen might be Tom Brady. And then we thought, no, he might be Peyton Manning. Well, I think I figured it out. We have to go one more generation back to find out who his comparison is. And it's Brett Favre. Now, I hope for, and I'm only talking about on the field. I'm not talking about robbing Mississippi or any of his questionable behaviors. But I was going to say, I hope for Josh Allen's sake that he's not, because we know Brett Favre only won one ring. However, he was totally beloved. And I think Buffalo and Green Bay have a lot of similar traits. I mean, the community, will shovel snow for you. I mean, the fans roll. And there's a lot of Northeast teams that are like that. The Patriots are very family oriented, where just like the Packers don't have an owner, the Patriots owner actually funded the new lighthouse that they built. Like, the community is so intertwined with the team. So I feel like I just wanted to say Josh Allen, I really think he may be like our modern day Brett Favre. But we're never going to say the Bills don't have a chance to win the Super Bowl. We just won't, right? Just like we didn't with Brett Favre. But Brett Favre didn't have, not every year was a good year with Brett Favre. We have to remember that too. And this could be the year that Josh Allen kind of reels it back a little bit. And on the opposite coin, they wrote that Hurts took a massive leap in his third season, becoming a consistent dominator for a loaded Eagle squad. We don't know if he'll match the heights he reached in 2022 when he became just the second quarterback all time to log 165 plus carries in a season, logging 4.6 yards per attempt and 13 touchdowns on the ground, second most by a quarterback in any NFL season. But he could get even better as a passer, playing behind an elite offensive line with playmakers all around him. This was an easy decision. The only problem I have with this is that they're saying by the end of this year, Jalen Hurts will be welcomed into the NFL superstar competition. Bro, you're late. Like, by week 8 last season, like almost a full year ago, Jalen Hurts was a superstar. Like, I can't believe that they are saying, like, we need to see more to put him in the club. Like, why? We didn't need to see more Patrick Mahomes. Like, he went in his first year and he lost to Tom Brady and the Patriots. It was the AFC Championship game, but he did not even make the Super Bowl. And he was the Madden cover the next year. I mean, I don't understand why somebody that had an even better year than Mahomes has to do it again. It's just like the NFL picks, who they're going to roll with. Or maybe people really just feel like it was a fluke, but it wasn't. And just watch the film. So I got a problem with Jalen Hurts being on the welcome list. Like, he's not already there. That's kind of dumb. And then the other quarterbacks that are on the welcome list or on the list, the complete list: Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert. How is Justin Herbert already on the list and Jalen Hurts isn't? I'm sorry, but whoever's running these articles, which I'm going to call them out right here. Who wrote this one? Dan Hanzus, Around the NFL podcast co-host. No, man. Wrong. So much wrong. Not only is there so much wrong, but look at this is the running back position. Say goodbye to Dalvin Cook. This was a tough one. Cook remained a very productive running back in 22, tallying nearly 1,500 total yards and 10 touchdowns, including one of the most memorable scores of the 2022 regular season. Look away, Colts fans. The fact that he remains unemployed following his release from the Vikings in early June tells you everything you need to know about how the modern NFL values veteran running backs. He's 27. Like, he and Alvin Kamara are the same age, but Alvin Kamara feels like he's 30, right? Say goodbye to Alvin Kamara. I can get behind that. I had him on fantasy last season. He's just different without Sean Payton. Like, Sean Payton is a running back. I mean, look at the amount of running backs that the Mark Ingrams, the Reggie Bushes, Deuce McAllister. I mean, there was always a good running game in New Orleans with Sean Payton. But as soon as he left, it was like Alvin Kamara checked out with Sean Payton. Dalvin Cook's been good every year, no matter who they got there, right? Doesn't matter who's that quarterback. Doesn't matter who's the head coach. Doesn't matter who the GM is. Dalvin Cook is Dalvin Cook, and he feels a lot younger than Alvin Kamara. I'm not sure if Alvin Kamara was just older when he was drafted. Let me see if it says right here. It doesn't say when he was drafted. I'd imagine it was 8 years ago. But I feel like Dalvin Cook and Alvin Kamara shouldn't be in the same boat right now. I would say, yeah, you could say goodbye to Alvin Kamara, especially after they brought in, was it Jameson Williams or Jamal Williams from the Detroit Lions? Like, once they brought him in, it was like, oh my God, there goes his goal line touches, right? Because Jamal Williams is the goal line running back. That's why he led the NFL last year with, I think it was 16 or more rushing touchdowns, led the league. But Dalvin Cook, I mean, he's going to end up on the Jets or he's going to end up on the Dolphins. And wherever he ends up, you're going to see a lot of him. And the problem with the Jets and the Dolphins is, like, they don't want each other to get them. They're divisional rivals, and they both have very similar expectations this year. So, I mean, if a team like Miami or the Jets get Dalvin Cook, that team is going to the other team. So, if Alvin Kamara were to go to one of those two teams, I don't really think anything happens. Like, yeah, maybe two, but it's not like, oh, and that took us over the edge, And Kamara's not even going to play half the season with his suspension coming from, the battery charges that he got at Vegas. And then they wrote close calls. Austin Eckler was a close call. Saquon Barkley was a close call. How? And then there's Josh Jacobs, the NFL's reigning rushing champion and an absolute stud for the Raiders last season. Does one season of superstar production make you a superstar? I suppose it could. Hi, Jonathan Taylor. Color me a touch wary. With Jacobs coming off the season, which he ranks second in the NFL in carries and first in touches, we've seen in the past how the bill can come due for that kind of a workload. Yeah, but he's an Alabama running back. And we've also seen Alabama running backs never cash that check. Derrick Henry has been taking on a workload like that for 8 years. And we just now maybe saw the minor regression out of him. I mean, that's just such a lousy take. Like, why is he going to go from being the NFL's leading rusher to not even a superstar? He had the most touches last year. You're going to have to be better than that. That is not a good enough reason to say that. Josh Jacobs, definitely, I mean, he's holding out right now. So we'll see how that happens. Like, is he going to play? Is he going to come in late in the season? I feel like the Raiders are going to pay him. Usually, if you're a player, a good player, not just any player, but if you're an elite player, the player always wins the holdout. The problem is this specific position is one of the most disrespected positions in the league. So we're going to have to wait and see how that unfolds. But this whole like welcome to superstardom, goodbye, I literally have an issue with all of them one way or another. And I never read these trying to have, an issue with them. I never do that. NFL training camp dates that I wanted to give you guys just so that you have them for all 32 teams. For the rookies, July 25th for the Arizona Cardinals. For the Falcons, July 18th. This is for training camp. Baltimore Ravens, July 18th. Buffalo Bills, July 18th. This is only for the rookies. For the Bills, July 18th for the rookies. July 25th for the veterans. Carolina Panthers, July 22nd for the rookies. July 25th for the veterans. And I'll just go, Chicago Bears, July 22nd for the rookies. July 25th for the veterans. And to not go through every team like this, I'll just say between July 18th and July 25th, everybody will be in their training camp. Specifically for the Denver Broncos, July 19th, that's my brother's birthday. Shout out Tyler, PYT. And then July 25th for the veterans. For the Indianapolis Colts, for my boy Jinja, July 25th for the rookies and July 25th for the veterans. Let's hit Bills Giants right here, July 18th for the rookies, July 25th for the veterans. And the Green Bay Packers, or we got Liam, the Steelers, July 26th is going to be for rookies and veterans. So getting pretty close here. We're 1 month away from training camp, and then we roll right into preseason a week later. And then that's all she wrote. And then we're back, baby. We are fully back. We got 1 more month to go through. 1 more month. So I wanted to end on this. Do you guys know who Jahan Dotson is? Jahan Dotson. Because he showed up today. He was on a podcast called, what was it called? Second Wind. I think it was Second Wind. And I was like, who is this guy? Because he said, I got a chip on my shoulder. I had a chip on my shoulder last year, and now I got a chip on my shoulder this year. And I was like, who is this guy? Jahan Dotson, right? Well, Jahan Dotson was drafted 16th overall from the Commanders. Excuse me. So the Commanders drafted him 16th overall. So we know about Garrett Wilson. We know about Chris Olave. We know about a lot of the receivers. But what about Dotson? Who is this guy? I don't know why this guy was not on my radar at all. Like, he's drafted in the first round with the 16th pick, and I don't even know who he is. And I literally do this like 3 times a week for a year now. Like, I can't just not know somebody like that. So I was looking into his highlights. He went to Penn State, okay? And he was so good at Penn State. Now, he was sharing space with the Broncos, KJ Hamler, who the Broncos drafted in the second round in the same draft that they got Jerry Jeudy and Drew Lock. But, I mean, this guy was a stud. Like, his hands were impeccable. His route running is amazing. His run after the catch is really good. And I was watching his combine thing. I'm like, man, this dude is good. And it's like, no crap, he's good. That's why they drafted him 16th overall. But I'm like, what about, like, why do I know about Chris Olave and I know about Garrett Wilson and all these other guys? Well, because, I mean, I felt like there was more hype around them, sure. But in Dotson's first game, he had 2 touchdown catches. Like, his first game as a rookie, against the Jaguars at home. He had a touchdown, I think it was early in the second or the first. And then with like 44 seconds left in the game, they were down. It was third down, and Jacksonville sent pressure. And I don't know if it was Heineke or who was that quarterback, but he just threw it up, just launched it. And somehow Dotson came down with that. Amazing go-ahead touchdown to beat the Jaguars. I think they beat, I'm assuming. I didn't see the last 20 seconds, but an amazing grab. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, holy crap, man, this guy looks really good on film. And he had 4 touchdown catches in his first 4 games, but then he injured his hamstring week 4 against the Cowboys. And then he was about to come back, but then he re-aggravated it. So he ended up missing 5 games. So this is kind of why we don't know him, because he was injured for 5 games. But then he came back, and I believe he only had 2 catches in his 4 games back from the hamstring. But then to finish his, let me see if I can find it here. To finish the season in his final 4 games, I wrote it down here. Here we go. His final 4 games of the season, it was a very strong finish. He had 21 catches, 344 yards, and 3 touchdowns. A lot of those catches and yards were against the Giants. Sorry, Bill. But, I mean, I was watching, and I'm like, man, he's not tall. He's like 5'11", but he's got that 50-50 ball. He really gets that ball at its highest point. We've seen, and I've said this about Quentin Johnson, the receiver out of TCU that the Chargers drafted. Sometimes big receivers, they rely on their height, and they don't really get the ball at its highest point. But like your 5'11" receivers, they need to get the ball at its highest point because they don't have any height to fall back on. Dotson, I mean, when he's on the field, he was really good. And when's the last time you heard anything about this guy? Like, when's the last time you turn on ESPN and they're like, oh, Dotson, he's going to be, a Pro Bowler by the end of the season, anything like that. And I know the Commanders have not the greatest team in their quarterback situation, ownership. There's a lot of turmoil going on within the Commanders organization, but you can still have a great receiver in a bad organization. Terry McLaurin is a perfect example. We all know how great and special he is. Well, Dotson's next. And I didn't want to say anything because I play fantasy football with Rick and others. But if you're in the 6th, 7th round and Dotson is still there, draft him immediately. Because look up his highlights for yourself and tell me that this guy's not going to ball out. He's already done it. It's just, it wasn't enough with his injury for us to, for whatever reason, it didn't make national news. People would rather talk about Chris Olave or Garrett Wilson, which is fine. That is the chip that Dotson has on his shoulder, is the fact that no one does talk about him. And that kind of fuels him. His mom got cancer when he was in college. Like, he's got a lot of personal reasons to prove his doubters wrong. But let's not pretend he's like this major underdog. Like, he was drafted 16th overall. He was drafted that high because he's a baller. The NFL people just don't know it yet. So I wanted to do that little thing on Dotson because I like to give a different angle, when I can. It's easy to repeat the news and just give an opinion, but I also want to provide different angles and different players to highlight. Jahan Dotson, keep an eye on him this year. And if you guys are watching this episode for the first time, please subscribe to our channel. We are a growing channel. A small family here. We actually interact a lot with the comments. Bill and Jinja and Liam, we on first name basis here. So this would be a perfect time for you and your friends if you're looking for somebody, looking for a channel to join, also gain insight on NFL. We'll get your fantasy team right. Just make sure you don't tell your buddies about it, or you guys are going to be trying to draft the same people. But follow us on Twitter at FTBL ONLY PODCAST. Football only podcast, but with an FTBL. And you can follow my partner, my friend, my everything, Rick at And Now Rick, ANDNOWRICK. Yeah, and please tell everybody about it. Like our shorts, comment on our videos, be a supporter of this channel, and we would really appreciate that. We'll be announcing tomorrow some really big news, so be sure to tune in to that. And until tomorrow night, go Broncos and have a great night. See you.